Thank you everybody for joining and welcome to this PRCA B2B group event. As hopefully you all know, this is a best practice showcase. And by way of introduction, I'm Lizzie Jones. I'm a senior director at B2B comms agency but with my hat on today as the group chair for the PRCA's B2B group. And you've also got Kiri Abrahams here from the PRCA, the head of groups, who has been in charge of coordinating all of this and will talk to you a little bit at the end about what else the PRCA has got coming up. But for today, we have a jam-packed lineup covering campaigns from telco and sustainability to cybersecurity and payments technology. All of these campaigns have recently been recognised in the PRCA awards shortlists for B2B Campaign of the Year. So you'll be getting a glimpse into some really brilliant, best-in-class PR thinking. You have four brilliant agencies here and even one presentation where you're getting both the client side and the agency side of the presentation. The Q&A will be open as we go through these presentations. There are four of them. So please do pop your questions into that Q&A as we go. And what we'll do at the end of each presentation is I'll select a couple of them to put to the teams presenting and we can go from there. Also at the end, we will just pass over a quick 5 minutes to our wonderful sponsors at MPS, who are a research and insight strategy business, and they will be able to tell you a little bit more about themselves as well. So without any further ado, we will dive on in. We will begin with the team from Babel with their Cost Less, Waste Less, Achieve More campaign that they did with TXO, all about extending the life of technology and reducing waste. I'll pass to Ash Beddy and Joel Goodson to take you through that campaign.
Thank you so much, Lizzie, and it's a pleasure to be here and talk through this campaign. It's something we've achieved some recent recognition for, so we're quite proud of it. I'm a senior campaign director here at Babel. Joel is our content director. We've both been intimately involved with this campaign, and essentially at a very simple level, it started as a bit of repositioning work, but it's also a good example of something we think all B2B campaigns need to do more often, and that's move beyond visibility and help a business really define the market it wants to lead. When we began working with TXO, the company was still largely known as a supplier, a regional supplier of second user telecoms hardware. They're based in rural South Wales, but the market around it was changing quite quickly. Telecoms operators were upgrading networks, they were decommissioning huge volumes of legacy infrastructure, and they were facing some real volatility in global supply chains. And that gave us a bigger opportunity than what the brief immediately was, and that was to help TXO move from being seen as a hardware provider to being recognised as a circular economy leader in telecoms. So just on to the next slide. And so just a quick word on Babel before we get into things. We're a specialist B2B tech and PR agency. We're around 20 years old, and through that time, we've always been laser focused on complex technology. This slide gives you some of the vast facts. We're employee-owned, B Corp certified, around 30 industry specialists in the UK, but work with a network of like-minded partners around the world. In terms of our approach, we recently launched our own client promise that we back their brave, and that materializes in a range of different ways across our day-to-day work. But fundamentally, that means helping clients take bold positions, but grounding those in insight and evidence and commercial relevance. And TXO is quite a good example of that. It's a campaign where we help the business move from a narrow hardware story into a much bigger market position. The next slide is a very quick and useful, hopefully shorthand to how we approach the challenge for TXO. Our sort of operating model is understand, create, deliver. So first, really get under the skin of the client's actual market position, not just a story they're already telling. Then we create a sharp brand story that gives them the right to lead and deliver it across, channels that matter for them. With TXO, the brave move was to stop treating sustainability as a narrow ESG story The industry conversation around circularity was often framed as doing the right thing environmentally. And of course, that's important, but our research shows that it wasn't really always the primary buying trigger for their customers. So the work was essentially reframing circularity as a commercial strategy, a way to reduce waste, yes, but also to lower costs, unlock new sources of supply, extend the life of existing networks, and create value from infrastructure that otherwise might have been written off. And that became the foundation for circular network transformation, a category that essentially connected sustainability to operational resilience, financial performance, and network transformation at a particularly volatile point in the global supply conversation. So that's the context. Joel's going to walk us through how we kicked that work off, how we got under the skin of TXO's buyers, challenged the assumptions people were making in existing positioning, and built the strategic foundations for the campaign.
Great. Thanks, Ash. Afternoon, everyone. Just about still, right? So great. So yeah, onto the campaign starting. If we can go on to the next slide, please. Perfect. Thank you. So onto the campaign starting, I guess, as you always should, with the strategy. And the strategy and repositioning element was a huge part of this campaign. It was the first time we kind of run a project exactly like this using this approach that I'll quickly walk through. And we found it so useful and so successful. It's kind of become the framework for us as an agency for how we run kind of brand strategy and repositioning projects ever since. And in a nutshell, it's a highly insight driven approach. Often the way I kind of explain it to new prospects and new clients is it's no hunches and no egos. If we could move to the next slide, please. Thank you. So yeah, that approach starts with a deep dive. So understanding the brand, understanding the market they sit within. Now, Ash has kind of already mentioned it. At the time of this project, TXO was an existing retained client. So we had a good picture of them as a brand, but they'd evolved an awful lot over the last few years. What had started as a reseller in a warehouse in Chepstow had gradually evolved into this international PE-backed leader of circular economy solutions and services. And with that PE backing, they'd acquired about 4 to 5 companies within the last couple of years to improve their range and reach of services. But their positioning had evolved quite piecemeal. So they were quite a big player and their positioning was still maybe a few years out of date. So it was a perfect opportunity to take a step back, dig into that evolved brand that TXO had become and reassess their positioning in the market. And to do that, and this is that kind of framework I mentioned that we do this now with all our projects of this type, is we look in 3 places. So number one is the leadership team. So conduct a workshop with the SMEs and the leadership team and sales leaders to capture those initial insights. That gives us an initial view of TXO's customers and what their differentiator is. But beyond that, it gives us something even more valuable from day one, and that's internal alignment and kind of day one stakeholder buy-in. There are moments in that, I think it was a 4-hour workshop, where we just kind of sat back and let them, I don't want to say fight, that's a really strong word, but let them disagree. 10 minutes, we're just sat letting kind of C-level people hash things out because they don't always get the time to talk about this kind of stuff, and it's natural. So in terms of kind of brand positioning topics, there were disagreements, and that was great because it meant we got to iron them out in the room, and we didn't leave the room until those things were sorted. From there, the most important step is we then took the time to speak to customers. I remember I said no hunches, no egos, so we couldn't stop at just the leadership team. We had to speak to customers, and we did interviews with TXO customers and uncovered the kind of rational, emotional drivers behind their decisions. And this allowed us to test and challenge the ideas from the workshop and ensure we were speaking the language of the customers, which was really valuable. There were 2 surprises that came up with speaking to customers. Number one was how easy it was to secure time with them to begin with. If anyone's tried to get case studies from out of big customers in the past, you'll know how hard it is. But I think because we positioned it for internal use, not external marketing material, it was something that was surprisingly easy to get time with. So we got to speak to big brands like BT and Orange and Vodafone. It was really, really valuable. The second surprise, probably more specific to the project, was one that was that the TXO board were kind of slightly trying to talk to the wrong person. They were aiming a little bit too high, and their champions, the brand champions, the people that were really going to kind of open doors and champion their services, were a little bit lower. So that did require a bit of a step change from their positioning. And the third surprise, I'm not going to spoil just yet. We're going to cover that on the next slide. We also looked at the market kind of direct and indirect competitors and did a bit of research, which Ash will touch on. And so just briefly from those insights, we created an ideal customer profile, nothing crazy, but really important to have kind of a defined ICP, and then a benefits ladder. It's a little bit small on this slide. I don't know if you'd have kind of experienced this before, but particularly in the B2B tech space, the reason we think this is really valuable is often customers in that space, they will really focus on features and benefits, speeds and feeds. That's often where tech companies stop. So having a benefits ladder that pushes towards customer benefits and emotional benefits, it really encourages or even forces brands to kind of move beyond speed and feeds and start to think about how customers feel and what are the emotional levels we can pull and copy. And that's only real possible to do with confidence if you've done what we did and actually speak to customers to know that you are speaking their language. And from there, this is where we can take a step back to the previous slide, please. From there, we needed a clear positioning statement that moved them from the refurbished hardware supplier to a strategic partner. So back to that third finding, that was really key to the brand evolution, and it might sound slightly depressing, but bear with me. The main finding was customers didn't care about sustainability as much as we first thought they might. As I said this before, TXO have been evolving for years, and circularity and sustainability become a big part of that brand. Some of their flagship customers, particularly Orange and BT, were really, really bought in on the idea of sustainability and the value there. But there were other customers that we kind of unearthed and spoke to who were really just trying to make ends meet. They were understandably more focused on kind of making sure the network still works, evolving the network, and making sure that financially it's feasible. So for them, circular economy was helping them cut costs and manage costs across their network, or sourcing spare parts out of production parts often so they could keep the network running. So we had to broaden the horizon slightly, not just speak to a third of the market, but the entire market, because not everyone was in it for the environmental benefits. So it's about reducing waste, but not just environmental waste, financial waste and operational. And we also needed to push the focus just beyond telecoms because, as I said, they were growing a little bit and they wanted to expand into new markets. So that idea became technology should cost less, waste less, and achieve more. And if we do a little double jump into the rollout.
Yeah, I think we could probably go to the next one as well after this. So, the next sort of phase of this and the next few slides is just focus on execution, and that's the part where we were trying to sort of ensure that all of the work that Joel's just walked us through didn't just live in messaging documents. We wanted to make sure that the messaging was real across the places where TXO's audience would typically experience the brand, and that meant simplifying the website from a huge, complex product-led estate into something much clearer, much more bio-focused, tying into some of those customer and emotional benefits that Joel mentioned, meant creating some flagship content around copper recovery and network decommissioning, which could act as both a lead generation tool, but also a media story. And it also meant bringing the research directly to prospects through a webinar. We hosted an analyst and media webinar, which also saw a number of their sort of ideal customer profile and prospects attend. The positioning, though, was the organising thought that ensured we showed up consistently across all channels. I think the next slide is going to see Joel again talk very quickly to the mammoth work that went into the website immediately following the repositioning.
Yeah, I won't spend a huge amount of time here because we've got a lot of other great campaigns to get through. But yeah, as part of this brand refresh, we helped rework the website, not just messaging, but visual ID, which you can see a big part of this for TXO is to look a bit more elevated, a bit more grown up almost, more investor friendly as well, and just attractive to a wider global audience. Before it was a lot of hard hats and high vis. So we evolved this and just streamlined the website significantly, as Ash has said.
Sure. And then the next slide is the big storytelling for us. I think once we had the category and the positioning, we needed proof or a proof point that could allow TXO to speak beyond the telecoms trade conversation. And the flagship research really did that by quantifying the commercial opportunity in network decommissioning and copper recovery. One of our headline findings was that telcos could be sitting on a global stockpile of old copper wire worth up to $50 billion. And this was, we found this at the time where copper prices were at an all-time high and supply across the globe is constrained due to growing demand for it in electrification and things like that. So with this research, we were able to say not just circularity is important, but we were showing that within, buried legacy infrastructure, there was a major financial and environmental opportunity. And that gave, the positioning and TXO broad business relevance. It allowed us to talk to some of those challenges in the language of value creation, resource efficiency, infrastructure transformation. That allowed the proposition to travel into outlets like Bloomberg and Financial Times to register. The next slide is just some numbers. So the campaign reached 1.6 million people across 20 pieces of tier one and trade coverage. Lead generation white paper was downloaded more than 1,000 times. But more importantly, TXO actually directly attributed one piece of coverage, the coverage in Bloomberg, to a new £10 million contract that they just secured from a customer that they've been courting for some time. And that last stat is obviously one that we all want, right? To be able to tie back the value of PR coverage to real commercial gain. And that actually came up quite anecdotally for us. It was during a planning meeting with the CEO of TXO who just sort of received a text or an email and decided to mention that this new contract had just directly come from that prospect coming across the article. But yeah, essentially for us, the results here show that the repositioning landed in all the right places. The campaign gave TXO a clearer way to talk about its role in the market. It supported lead generation. It helped move the conversation from sustainability along to sustainability as part of a wider commercial and operational agenda, not just an ESG agenda. And that's probably the simplest way to sum up the campaign. We helped TXO turn a circular economy message into a more useful business story, one that customers, media, and the wider market could understand and act on. That's probably it for us. I think there's questions at the end, are there, Lizzie? Or
There are indeed. Thank you, Joel. Thank you, Ash. Brilliant case study. And absolutely, Ash, to your final point, being able to demonstrate the commercial return with the kind of financial deal that came off the back of it is fantastic to see. A couple of questions coming through, but in the interest of time, I'm going to just pick one. I think, Joel, you mentioned about recruiting customers for kind of collecting their insights and it being usually quite tricky. I think many people on this call can sympathise and empathise with that, but in this case, they were actually quite forthcoming. Could you just tell us a little bit more about how you went about it?
Yeah, sure. I think kind of suitably, ironically, kind of how you position it was really important. I think we've done this a few different times actually, and this wasn't a niche case. You'll find the other times we've done this, it's been just as easy to get customer time with big brands. I think when it's for internal use, and that's the main thing, you make it super clear that this is insights driven. It's for internal use. Like it's not a case study. Testimonials aren't going to go anywhere. It does open a lot of doors. And I think if you also offer them the kind of opportunity to shape the brand that hopefully they do care about, they're more than happy to take the time to discuss. So yeah, I think it's just positioning it the right way.
Love that.
Normally, if these customer relationships are quite strong, they're more than happy to kind of give an hour of their time. And yeah, it was surprising. And like I say, we've done a few projects like this since then with the same approach, and it's been surprisingly easy each time.
Brilliant. Thank you, Joel. So yeah, making it very clear what's in it for them, being able to feedback and hopefully improve their experience as a customer. Fabulous. We will keep us rolling forward. The next presentation is from the team at Golin. This is the connection test campaign they did with Square Trade. And this was the world first biometric experiment to prove people's emotional bonds with their phones. I think something that we can probably all relate to. And we've got Barty Caesar and Rory Hewitt from the team at Golin who are going to present this.
Hi, thanks very much, Lizzie. Hi, everybody. I'm Rory. I'm a manager in the B2B tech team at Golin in London, and really excited to be talking to you today about the connection test from Square Trade. I'll pass over to my colleague Barty, who'll give a bit of background on Square Trade and the campaign objectives.
Thanks, Rory. Yeah, hi everyone. It's great to be here, Barty from the Golin team. So SquareTrade is a device insurer. They are part of the Allstate group, and they really wanted to shift perception and awareness among key decision makers among certain audiences. And they came to us with this need, and they really trusted us through this process to come up with something totally different than they'd ever done before, something quite ambitious and creative, with the view of tapping into sort of cultural conversations and reaching these really important audiences, with all roads leading to MWC Barcelona, which is very much the sort of epicenter of where many of those key targets exist. So we had a really sort of specific um, segment that we wanted to reach in timeline to achieve it by. And that was sort of the basis of what we wanted to achieve with this campaign. We can move on to the next slide. So as with everything we do when coming up with our approach in order to achieve all of that, we sort of take consideration of the broader context around, devices and insurance to determine what our insight would be for achieving what we wanted to. And I think the thing that we kept coming back to was this really interesting interplay around, I think, as you said, Lizzie, our devices were so attached to them. We use them today for absolutely everything, whether it's, getting the train, chatting to your friends, dating apps, whatever it might be, right? They've become so integral to everything that we do. Yeah, often we don't protect them. It's sort of, we'll think about it after the fact when something's happened. You're like, oh, I wish I'd had insurance. And that sort of gap between value and action was something that we were so interested in exploring from both a sort of behavioral to psychology perspective. And it was a really informative piece of how we came up with the concept of biometric piece. We also commissioned research to better understand how consumers thought about their devices, how they felt sort of emotionally attached to them. And that was really sort of how we determined that there was this gap between action and sort of the value that you've got for these devices. And that protection gap was our opening that sort of formed the rest of what we did. And I'll hand over to Rory for this next slide now.
Thanks, Barty. Yeah. So the insight that Barty's just described, it gave us this problem where, people have a profound emotional connection to their devices, but are consistently failing to protect them adequately. And the insurance industry as a whole, rather than responding to this reality, it's largely been ignoring it. So our research made it quite clear that this isn't a static issue, and the way that people use and depend on their devices is going to be changing significantly over the next few years. So that means the stakes really are only going to get higher, and this isn't a problem that is going to resolve itself. Rather, it's going to compound, if anything. So we wanted to build a response around evidencing that protection and action gap. So we built two complementary pieces that work together. So one was emotional and immediate, and one was more sort of rational and forward-looking. And they were both designed to reach the same audience, but through different doors. So the first was the connection test, and this was a very human demonstration of this gap in action. So rather than telling people they're emotionally attached to their devices, we literally showed it with on-camera and measurable biometric data that couldn't be dismissed as purely anecdotal. And then we had the future laboratory report, which was the more intellectual layer. And this grounded the campaign in rigorous forward-looking research about where device ownership is heading, and what the industry needs to do to keep pace. So both of these together gave SquareTrade something that really no competitor had, which was a campaign that was working both emotionally and evidentially at the same time. And the report was, making the case for closing this protection gap as technology continued to accelerate. If we go to the next slide, please. Cool. So with this strategy in place, we rolled it out across 3 phases, which you can see on this slide, and each really building on the last and designed to reach our audience at different points within this funnel. So our first phase on the left there is the T. So, really before anything went public, we activated on executive LinkedIn channels with Carl Wiley, the CEO of Allstate Protection Plans, and Kevin Gillen, the EMEA MD at SquareTrade. And it's really seeded the narrative around the intersection of technology and human emotion. And we also ran a paid media partnership at the same time with the Economist and Forbes to really extend that reach directly into the demographic that we were wanting to target. And then we had the formal launch itself. So this was where the research, the report, and hero film all went out to national broadcast business and trade media simultaneously. A quite critical call that we made at the time was to try and connect the campaign to the UK phone theft crisis, which was a live and genuinely newsworthy issue at that moment in time. So by giving journalists commentary on why losing your phone was so emotionally devastating, grounded in this biometric data that we had, it gave editors a story that went well beyond just purely a campaign piece. So it really opened up coverage in outlets that probably otherwise wouldn't have had a reason to pick up a story on insurance. And then for the third phase at MWC, this was where really everything came together. So by this point, the campaign had its media momentum behind it, and we really wanted to use MWC to elevate the conversations to the wider industry itself. So, making the case not just for SquareTrade, but actually the role that the insurance industry has in itself as a whole in closing this protection gap. So we had both Carl and Kevin join us in Barcelona, and they presented the campaign and report insights from the main broadcast stage at MWC. So that really, immediately established SquareTrade as a serious, credible voice at the event, rather than just purely another exhibitor. If we go to the next slide, we should have our film. So we'll get this played now. Or if we're having technical issues, we can come back potentially.
Oh
Barty
no,
can go
it's
into
not
impact.
working. I mean, the film's great, so we'll I don't know, figure out how to play it, or we'll share the link in the chat. But I mean, the film is really the the centerpiece of that biometric test, and what Rory's been describing is the real sort of human heart of the story. But okay, in terms of impact, I mean, it was huge, really. We were able to tell so many different types of stories narratively across lots of different audiences, really, all sort of linking back to that need state in terms of protection and being able to close that gap. And ultimately linking to how insurers and the wider mobile ecosystem need to collaborate better, particularly because that we could see that, the sort of risks that exist today, while important and real, are sort of going to accelerate over the coming years. And it's interesting because our report with the Future Lab, many of the things that that report talks about, we can kind of now see becoming increasingly important consumer topics. So we had the sort of broad, media impact and reach, engagement across a lot of these great assets was way above industry standards. We had over 2 million views on our YouTube video, so we can definitely drop the link in chat for that. And then I think crucially at MWC, we saw a huge amount of engagement, and for what is such a competitive point in time, particularly for large scale mobile manufacturers and players from the ecosystem, to have an insurance player show up and have so much interest in being able to articulate their vision of how the industry is evolving and how insurance players can add value to the mobile and consumer sort of circular chain in sort of the way that they were trying to by partnering with them was hugely valuable. They saw some great business development opportunities and conversations happening at the show, and we sort of centered everything around a great celebration on night one of the event, including with sort of top tier attendees from across the industry in media as well. Next slide. I mean, why did it work? It really comes down to telling a human story. And I think that's what we did with this across each of these different channels, tapping into cultural significance of things like phone theft in the UK, and really leveraging the data that we had in incredibly interesting ways, and then thinking audience first across each of those different channels and media that we were speaking to through this campaign. But it all came down to the human at the heart of it. That's it for us.
Amazing. Another brilliant case study. Thank you, Bartu and Rory, for taking us through that. I think your kind of final comment there, Bartu, about, something at With we talk about is kind of if you can nail a truism that is going to be so kind of unilaterally understood, that idea of our connection with our phones, and then hang a campaign around that, it is going to have legs. And you can really see how that, took hold. Couple of questions, and again, I'm probably going to have to just pick one. But we've got one question here about kind of the breadth of this campaign, and obviously you've mentioned, that there was sponsored content, that there were some media partnerships, that there was obviously the big Mobile World Congress event, which was probably part of the marketing team function. But if you can give us an idea of kind of how you brought that together in terms of, did you present menu of options to the client in terms to get the full budget signed off, or was it kind of a kind of given that the client really wanted to invest in this?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, from the outset, it was ambitious from the very beginning. We knew we wanted to do something very much within the spirit of Golin's sort of creative and quite meaty approach to taking campaign work, which was very fully integrated and ambitious. I mean, there was the paid media bit, the social, the exec, the events, the research, the hero film. It was meaty. But I think that was also what was so exciting to these clients, because they hadn't done anything like this before. And we could see how this would differentiate them among what's typically a very slow and risk-averse set of players within the insurance space, and particularly sort of adjacent industries as well. So that felt exciting, and we could see the real worth in doing that, particularly because they hadn't before. And I think they trusted us a lot with that creative vision and journey. But through each of those different components, and I mean, it was months of planning and hard months of very quick and different type of work. They were sort of part of the journey too, so they were brought in. But yeah, it was ambitious.
Amazing. Brilliant. Well, thank you both again. There are a couple more questions that have come through. Do keep them coming within the Q&A section on the bottom of your menus for anybody viewing. We will, if we have time at the very end, a couple more questions. But for now, I will keep us moving. Thank you, Bartu. Thank you, Rory. And I will move us on to the team from the Academy. And today we've got Chris Hydes and Nick Albro from the team at the Academy talking to us about their campaign with MasterCard, the Click to Pay Capitals campaign, all around payment technology, obviously with MasterCard, how it's used around the world. So I will pass to the chaps.
Thank you very much, Lizzie, and good afternoon, everybody. Okay, so what we're going to do is quickly talk you through the strategy that we developed for this campaign and lead us straight into the big creative idea, how we activated it and what that led to, and we'll keep it pretty punchy. So this is a goal that was set by their business, and that the aim for MasterCard was to get 100% of Europe tokenized by 2030. And for those of you that don't know, tokenization is essentially a process by which all your card details that you have to input if you're going to make an online transaction get replaced by a single token, which is easier, quicker, and more secure. So there is a clear benefit, but that benefit sits behind a word that perhaps people don't understand in quite a complicated technology. But they'd set this goal and they wanted our help in achieving it. So the job for the PR to sort of align with that goal was to create a pan-European education campaign. So we needed something that was going to work across multiple markets for them, because this is obviously it was a European ambition that they had. But a campaign that would not just educate, but would probably more importantly from our point of view, bring both consumers and merchants on this journey to the new payment technology that they were keen to roll out. We did a fair bit of insight gathering on this, and essentially, once we distilled this brief down, what we concluded was that whilst they were a little bit intimidated by the 2030 deadline that they set themselves, we felt that that, in truth, was one of the great opportunities here. Was it offered us an opportunity to issue a rallying cry. We could organise our comms efforts behind the goal in order for all of businesses and merchants of Europe to join the mission to achieve that goal and adopt this new way of storing and using their information. Sort of working that through, our strategic approach, our organizing thought was all about clicking onto the smarter way to pay. So what was baked into that was the idea that what we had to do really was to educate those people that we were trying to reach. And in this case, it was both merchants and consumers, to help them to better understand why on earth they would make the transition into this new technology and the key benefits behind it. And not just to educate them, but actually to drive action. So the success of the campaign would rest largely on whether or not the merchant and the consumers actually paid attention and chose to click onto this smarter way to pay. So our strategy beneath that organizing thought, clicking onto the smarter way to pay, was about we had to find a way to simplify the technology, find a communications platform that would enable those that we were trying to reach to understand it quickly and easily, talk about the practical benefits of adopting it, i.e. it makes it easier for you if you are using it, because that's a key benefit. And thirdly, find a way of co-opting businesses and consumers to educate and inspire others, because we felt that if we could convert members of the communities, both business and consumer in each of those markets, they could do a great job for us of communicating the benefits rather than just MasterCard relying on its own channel and its own voice.
Great. Thank you, Chris. So just to talk a little bit about the creative idea, if our mission is out there to go and find advocates for this, our idea was to conceive of click-to-pay capitals. This is teaming up with towns across Europe that we thought could best illustrate the pain of manually entering personal details at the checkouts, and therefore the benefits of the move to tokenization. The idea was to team up with the towns across Europe with the longest names. You can see here what we mean by long names. I mean, some of you will be familiar with Llanfair in Anglesey in Wales, which has got the world's longest name for a town. We also identified 6 other towns across Europe, across MasterCard's priority markets, that have with communities that face very similar challenge around having to enter their extraordinarily long town name every time they're filling in their personal details, be that at a checkout or elsewhere. Now, there were 3 phases for the campaign, and I should say phase 1 is the one that we'd wrapped just before sort of entering the awards. I'll talk you through that, but we'll also talk you through the 2 phases that followed, where we sort of followed through on the promise of phase 1. So on the next slide, phase 1, as I say, we chose the 7 European towns and villages with the longest names to become our click-to-pay capitals. These places really became the sort of heroes, if you like, of our story, showcasing how painful it is to enter your details when making purchases online, and the impact that has on businesses and economies too. To get some insight behind that, we conducted some consumer research highlighting how clunky online checkouts can result in basket abandonment, in the sort of the impact on merchants of people dropping out because, whether it's data entry or otherwise, checkouts are complex. We then work with local businesses in each community to help them install click-to-pay technology, to get a feel for it and raise awareness of its ease and accessibility. We created film and photography. I mean, this meant flying out to 7 different towns across sometimes quite remote parts of some of these countries across Europe to meet the community. We featured residents, dignitaries, community figures. A big part of this job actually was in building connections with the communities and convincing some of the key figures from that community to sort of take part and to be spokespeople for us. While also, the film was created there's a link hopefully being shared in the chat, which was, very intentionally sort of Wes Anderson inspired film that really highlighted some of the beautiful sort of esotericness of some of these communities in how we heroed them. And then I suppose obviously the earn story around this, we got earn coverage across Europe. I mean, I'll come to the results a little bit later, but we told that story in a number of different ways to reach different verticals. So that was kind of the promise that we set, and sort of setting the stage of the communities that we were going to use as our platform for the story. Phase 2 was really then about going and visiting those click to pay capitals in a bit more of an intentional way to boost awareness and understanding and adoption of the new payment technology among the residents and local businesses. And each country, we took a slightly different approach. Typically, it was based on either what was important or central to the identity of that community, or perhaps just the most sort of newsworthy angle that we could pick up on for a particular market. We worked to talk about the Welsh example, because I probably went to Llanfair about 3 times during this campaign. We found an amazing football team that was non-league football team, very much grassroots, hugely passionate, hugely proud of their of their identity, and we worked with local Welsh designers to design football kits for the team. Became the sort of lead sponsor of the team, provided funding for a lot of the things they wanted to do around the game. Even turned up on a match day, their first home day of the season, and had a sort of click to pay sort of activation where we educated the fans on click to pay. And that is a long-standing partnership with that football group, and we've made some fond friends throughout the campaign. And then, and as I say, across Europe, we had a similar football team sponsorship situation in Netherlands. We had a payments sort of cottage, if you like, on wheels, going to the community in Sweden, and particularly focusing on the elder demographic that are less likely to want to switch on things like biometrics that might help them when using some of these technologies, and to educate them around the new ways to pay. And theatre activations in Italy that focused on a younger demographic, and food festivals and the like across the continent. And then phase 3, sort of bringing the activity together. We've sort of built the story, we've built the community, we've got case studies. We're looking for ways to help to sort of use that to advocate for movement across the rest of the continent. So obviously pull together all of the data and progress and change that we've managed to achieve across all those communities, but also wanted a sort of central hero asset for our PR story. So we developed State of Pay as a European league ranking of countries on their sort of uptake of the new payment behaviors. That was a blend of survey work and also proprietary data from MasterCard's excellent data banks. We teamed up with Peter Schmeichel, who many people can't spell his name out the blocks, who was a great advocate and someone that was really able to to speak to the sort of the tactical benefits of tokenization. And basically he put together, he's now pundit. He could talk to the way that tokenization worked in a way that was very easy to understand, and great assets for social, but also for earned and known channels as well. And I should say that we had obviously a film as well that sort of pulled together just absolutely everything that we'd achieved over the year, because there was quite a lot of things going on in different markets, and really wanted to knit it all together. On the next couple of slides, you can see just some of the highlights in terms of just earned and social coverage. I mean, just I suppose to say that by telling the story in this way, we were able to get coverage everywhere from CNBC to 442 and sort of everything in between. And I think the breadth of coverage is one of the things that we were able to bring to this. I mean, you can see star coverage down there. That's one of their reporters who came down to the football match and actually featured in loads of our photography. So it was a real broad range of coverage, and on the social side as well, was the assets all created for involvement in that. I should say that football team continues to post about us almost daily. Such was a sort of heartwarming relationship between the two of us. And then just on the results very quickly, we from an point of view, it's about 650 plus unique pieces of coverage. I think we had north of 90% share of voice on the subject of click to pay throughout the campaign period. I should say click to pay is a technology that's backed by the whole payments industry. So, Visa, Amex, MasterCard, others. Our campaign was to really create association for MasterCard with that. So that share of voice figure was important. 100% positive sentiment, very much a feel-good campaign. We saw 160% growth in consumer enrollments year on year. Pretty eye-watering increases in merchant adoption. I can't share those figures because they're commercially sensitive, but that was really one of the big winning points for this campaign. And now Click to Pay lives in 30 markets across Europe, and we are halfway towards the goal of having 100% payments tokenized in Europe by 2030. So about 50% of the way there. So great work to do, but a great foundation for this long-running campaign for them. Thank you.
Brilliant stuff. Brilliant stuff. Um, Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Nick, for another absolutely stellar campaign. I need to find out where I can get my hands on one of the Llanfair MasterCard scarves. Um, but Chris, a question, just kind of going back to the kind of the process that you went through at the start and kind of the strategy. You mentioned that you needed to find the right communications platform in order to get that educational piece across the audiences and get that across the line to start with. And it was clearly a brilliant creative that you landed on with lots of different iterations, whether it's the football team or speaking to local businesses in towns around Europe. Um, but how did you, and how do you, maybe at the academy, work up that kind of brilliant creative? What's your process? What's your secret sauce of bringing that kind of creativity into kind of B2B campaigns? To your point, something that could be otherwise quite technical, quite impenetrable.
Well, first thing is we don't really make a distinction between what is a B2B campaign and what is a consumer campaign. I think we treat every campaign as a challenge that our client has got, and we bring the same level of creativity to it. So it's not like we have B2B creatives and consumer creatives and what have you. And the idea is, interestingly, this idea didn't come from a creative in the agency either. It came from the team. So, we encourage everybody to express themselves creatively. So that's part one. Part two is we do have a process that we follow, and that requires us to get all what we haven't shared with you here is the insight from both the consumer insight we gathered, the category insight, the brand insight, and we model that and from that create the organizing thought. Then from the organizing thought, which in this instance was clicking onto the smarter way to pay, we'll then turn that into a creative brief that we will sort of give some example executions that would sit under that organizing thought, but would then have enough information in that brief to encourage anybody that wants to be creative to start thinking of ideas for it. And that particular idea, connects back to the organizing thought, because at its heart, it was really about showing people this is just a more intelligent way of going about paying for things. And there is one of the great benefits of this technology is that you don't have to repeatedly put your details in, which then gets you to, well, think about those poor people who've got complicated names or live at addresses that are really difficult. They have to keep putting them in and correcting them. So that's how we arrived at the O. So there is a process that sits behind it, but I think ultimately it's about encouraging everybody to think creatively, and everybody has an opportunity to respond to every brief.
Yeah, amazing, and a brilliant campaign. And one of the comments in the sidebar chat is that it may be that campaign's done more for the brand than purely just educating on click to pay. It seems like it was a really bold and good, successful grassroots campaign as well. So yeah, lovely stuff. Thank you both. Great, we will keep things rolling. The last presentation, and this is the one that I promised at the start, where we have both perspectives from both the client and agency side, is from TMW and Accenture Song with their client Group IB and the Masked Actors campaign. And this was all about high-tech crime trends. So presenting this case study to you, we have Catherine Hegarty, and Olivia Harry from TMW Accenture Song, but also Tanya Pennells from Group IB. So I'll hand over to those guys to take you through Masked Actors.
Hi everyone, and thank you for sticking out to the end to listen to us. I'm Catherine Hegarty. I'm an Associate Director at TMW, part of Accenture Song, which is an integrated PR and marketing agency.
Hi guys, I'm Liv. I'm an Associate Creative Director at TMW. Excitingly, we're actually moving into our second year of working with Group IB and on the Masked Actors campaign alongside our lovely client, Tanya.
Hi, and I'm Tanya. I'm the PR Manager for Europe at Group IB, and we're excited to be here to tell you about our award-winning campaign about masked actors.
You kicking us off, Tanya?
Yeah, there we go. So Group IB is a global cybersecurity company with genuinely world-class threat intelligence. This campaign actually kicked off the European PR program with Group IB when I joined the company back in 2024, and also marked the start of TMW time as Group IB's agency. In the time of this campaign, it has been described internally as a first of its kind within PR, with PR in Europe sort of representing a completely green field opportunity. It was genuinely a really bold and adventurous campaign to kick off our careers, as it were, with the organization. So each year, Group IB publishes its high-tech crime trends report. It's packed with insight. It's, at the crux of it, a vendor research piece. And historically, this existed as a really highly technical 400-odd page document that really wasn't serving PR effectively in its current form. And so as a result, we as a team had a frank conversation about repackaging it from a piece of marketing collateral into something that would genuinely be usable for comms. So our brief and my brief from TMW was that we had three clear objectives. The first was to increase the reach and the download of the high-tech crime trends report for 2025, reintroduce Group IB to national and trade media across Europe, and distinctly differentiate the brand from competitors in a very loud and very saturated category.
And we were obviously tackling this brief as kind of part of a new business pitch. So, we were working through insights that we conducted with our human understanding lab. And that kind of led us to two kind of key challenges that we identified. So first, there was a brand challenge. So while Group IB was known in the cybersecurity space, a lot of journalists were unclear what it stood for in the market today. And then the second challenge, which Tanya's kind of alluded to, is cybersecurity is a really crowded marketplace. Every year, cybersecurity vendors will share a report at roughly the same time, which makes getting coverage or differentiating yourself increasingly difficult. So we realized that the challenge wasn't a lack of really high quality data, it was actually how do we make people care? So if you move us on, Kiri, I'll take you through kind of our strategic approach to this. There's a lot of builds in these slides. So when it came down to building this, our big idea, we kind of took our cues from outside of the cybersecurity world altogether and instead leaned into culture. And we started by looking at how people already consume crime stories. So true crime is one of the most consistently popular genres across podcasts, documentaries, and long-form journalism, as you can see from some of these data points. And our fascination with serial killers and fraudsters speaks a lot to the kind of like primal need, I think, of us to understand the people behind them, who they are, how they operate, and what motivates them so that we can ultimately keep ourselves safe. But at its core, true crime works because it's humanizing threat. It's turning something that's quite abstract or overwhelming into something that people can easily understand, analyze, and learn from. But we realize that cybercrime kind of suffers from the opposite problem. In cybersecurity, threats are typically represented with faceless acronyms. There's a hell of a lot of data points. There's a lot of talk about attack volumes, but cyber criminals, like, our typical criminals, are actually human actors that, operate with patterns, hierarchies, they have motivations, and oftentimes some big egos. You might have seen from Scattered Spider, who conducted the M&S hack last year. And by stripping all of that away, the cybersecurity industry kind of unintentionally makes that threat feel a little bit more distant and harder to act on. So our strategic leap was this. What if we treated cybercriminals the way that true crime treats offenders, not to glorify them, but actually to expose them? So Masked Actors was built on the belief that unmasking cybercrime would make it more compelling, more understandable, and ultimately more actionable for defenders. So from a planning perspective, that insight kind of shaped everything that we did. So we reframed that 400-page annual report into not from a list of statistics, but into more of a cast of characters, a group of threat actors. And we leaned into the narrative formats that we know, audiences already love. So taking podcasts to kind of tell that true crime storytelling. And we used PR to bridge the gap between that deep technical intelligence and human curiosity. And this was an approach that gave journalists something that was genuinely different. It's not just another report that we had to launch, but actually had a story-led lens on cybercrime that felt kind of really timely and relevant for their readers. I think one thing to flag here is, we had to kind of strike this really crucial balance to avoid sensationalism. And so this campaign is about using some of those familiar storytelling instincts to make that information land a bit harder, but also to position Group IB as a brand that really understands the enemy that it's fighting. I'll hand over to Catherine just to take you through kind of the execution of the campaign.
Thanks, Liv. So Master Actors shines a light on the top 10 most prolific cyber criminal groups. So we brought the stories of the cyber criminal groups to life through 10 podcast episodes, each one using Group IB's threat intelligence, delving into their tactics, victims, and impact. We engage high-profile voices to really add depth and new perspectives. For example, Fergus Hay, CEO of the Hacking Games, to Jeff White, leading journalist, author, and expert on the Lazarus Group. With voices like these, we have really wide social reach, and it helped gain traction and build Group IB's authority. We gave the campaign a really attractive home on Group IB's website that was SEO optimized and really expertly designed by Group IB's in-house team. I think the imagery for this was stunning. Each group was giving its own really distinct persona to bring them to life, and top Trump style cards. The landing page was really a key asset for us. We had a wealth of research, but we needed a format that allowed media to easily access and use it. And this approach really was ideally suited to our journalists, enabled them to mine the content really quickly and effectively. And it also delivers strong SEO value while driving higher engagement and longer dwell times. We launched the top 10 media through targeted media mailers, pairing the high-tech crime trends report with mailers containing really sort of tongue-in-cheek references to threat active groups. Think chocolate coins for Gold Factory, and even like a cuddly toy dragon for Dragon Force. Beyond this launch, we carefully designed the campaign for longevity. This was really important for us. We didn't want it to be sort of a one-hit wonder thing. We wanted to do it sort of annually. So the website not only injected life into the creative concept, but it also became a trusted bank of information for high-profile journalists reporting on the front lines of cybercrime, just like the podcast. If we can now go on to results and impact. So this is the campaign that we took from pitch to reality, which can sometimes be quite rare. And the company not only doubled down on us as TMW, but also on Tanya, who was also new in role. The trust and belief in our idea really did pay off. By putting forward a fully integrated campaign, we wanted to drive results across brand awareness, media exposure, but most importantly, across sales. And some of the great results we saw included 108% increase in website traffic, over 7,000 podcast views, a 28% increase in report downloads compared to last year. We had 14 pieces of launch coverage, but organic numbers were much, much higher. And the campaign kept bringing in media wins for us throughout the year, which was great. But most importantly, it drove genuine sales and growth, including 25 leads, 3 MQLs, and 16 influence opportunities, and even 9 opportunities won, which is amazing. So the campaign really more than paid for itself.
And I think for me, the important thing is that this was a really integrated campaign that was genuinely greater than the sum of its parts. So from an earned perspective, it made us significantly more searchable and referenceable. Anytime a ransom attack appeared in the news, we had already demonstrated our expertise, and journalists knew where to look for that insight and that content, which resulted, as Catherine said, in a high volume of organic coverage throughout the year. Because the campaign performed so strongly across key metrics just in Europe in FY25, it has since also been adopted as a global campaign for FY26. So keep your eyes peeled. The campaign also generated inbound media inquiries for us from tier one outlets that we would not historically have received. For example, coverage with the Financial Times on Dragon Force wouldn't have been possible without relaunching the program to media. And internally, the campaign has made massive waves. Due to the success, we've doubled the investment for season 2. This is including changes in how the podcast is going to be produced, increased budget allocating to guests, the creation of additional content, a bigger and better landing page, and more streams to the podcast that directly responds to the news agenda.
And then I think we just want to finish with a key takeaway from each of us.
Yeah, so my key takeaway is for this campaign to take smart risks. So leading into what really works, like strong insights and audience understanding. Using an integrated channel mix really helped to bring stakeholders along the journey from my perspective. It really helped to build that trust and show evidence of how a PR program essentially was going to really support business goals.
And then from me, so don't default to how it's always been done. If a big idea feels too much of a leap, start small and allow it to grow. Like our season 2 is going to be even bigger and better. PR's role is to really champion the idea, support technical audiences and educate the business before, during and after launch.
Yeah, and I think from my side, it's kind of taking cues from culture. I think B2B as a whole needs to lean into entertainment as a currency. So, even the best and most compelling information won't land if it's not told in the right way or using the right storytelling framework. So, it doesn't matter if you're first or you're biggest if you can't make people care. Yeah, love to hear questions or thoughts.
Amazing. Thank you, guys. I absolutely love this campaign. It just jumps off the page. It's one that it really, particularly because particularly enjoy a true crime podcast. So love the creative thinking into the top end, but also the results. They really speak for themselves. So one of the questions that we've had, and something that I was thinking about as we went through, was kind of perhaps a question for you, Tanya, to start with, but then for the wider team. The idea that the kind of traditional industry report was kind of done year after year, and it was sort of the technical bread and butter that everybody in the business was kind of stuck to and used to. How much of a job was it to get them to buy in to what was quite a daring, quite a bold reinvention of that concept?
It's a very good question. So having spent over a decade previously in B2B PR agencies with a red thread of cybersecurity in my career, I have come across my fair share of these vendor reports, which informs the approach that I wanted to take with this. And I knew that TMW would be the right partner. I think the really key thing here was taking a smart risk. PR was a very green field for us. And we were willing to try something a little bit bold to see if we could make a splash, and using that integrated channel mix really helped to make stakeholders within the business feel comfortable about the approach that we were taking.
Brilliant. And I guess the question for the TMC team is kind of how it was to work with that integrated team on the client side. It feels like it was a really powerful collective effort, but with kind of different teams kind of collaborating.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think we're quite lucky because Tanya is a exceptional bridge between how the business operates and sort of, defending how we work as well. But I think from our side, it was like getting really like stuck in. Like we know quite a huge number of those members of different teams. So, we now have strong relationships with the kind of research team. We've got strong relationships with our podcast hosts. And I think that's the fundamental difference is you've got to embed yourself as much as possible and each understand where the other is coming from and kind of ways of working and come to some alignment. But to be honest, I mean, it should have been more difficult than it was, but I think it felt pretty seamless. And yeah, I think big testament of that too is to Tanya, really.
Amazing.
Definitely.
Thank you ever so much to both, Tanya from Group IB and the team from TMW. In the closing moments, we would love to just introduce MPS, who are a research, insights and strategy organisation. They are the sponsor of the PRCA's B2B group. And I'd love to introduce Avjit Roy, the International Client Director, to just tell you a little bit about who they are and what they do.
Thanks a lot, Lizzie. Thanks a lot to all the panelists, some fantastic presentations. Not too many of you probably know about NPS, so this is just a quick introduction, like a whistle-top tour across the company. So we are basically a full-service agency dealing in research, insight, and strategy. And for us, we are basically using a lot of human and empathy and also some AI designs to answer some research questions. Effectively, we are a full service agency and we are exclusive partners of PRCA as well. So we are the chosen partners for PRCA for this year. And obviously, it's proud to sponsor the B2B group as well. We are also part of the SMR group and the MRS group in the UK and also the Italian research organization as well called the ASSRM. And we're part of a lot of the other kind of ISO groups and ISO kind of situations as well. And effectively, we also kind of part of this company, this association called the Mystery Shopping International Network as well. So we've got a lot of credentials. We've got about 65 people working for us. So moving to the next slide. Obviously, a lot of the case studies which you hear was grounded in the insights and human insights, and that's where we come in. So a lot of our designs is very human-centered. We're looking at the data to create the evidence, to create the strategy and plans which feed into your campaigns as well. A lot of our work is taking to the growth outcomes using some data-driven decision-making as well. Basically looking at a lot of statistical analysis, using some predictive models. So we're just not a data collection agency. We're kind of a full service place where we've used a lot of techniques to create possible really good insights and impactful insights as well. And we work in a very collaborative way in terms of working with the agencies or the end clients as well, creating these research solutions and creating what we call research pathways to create those insights as well. To the next slide. In terms of our coverage, we go across the globe. So any country or any market which you're looking for, any regions, we can conduct research across the globe as well, including some of the partners with the AGMR as well. The next one, in terms of expertise, we go across all the sectors. So from a B2B perspective, you can see all the sectors which we've done research in the past. The company's been around for the last 30 years. So effectively, there's a lot of experience across all these sectors, including financial insurance, which is just some case studies we hear. The telco as well, which also there was a case study as well. And across any kind of B2B sectors, whether it's quasi-government or government sectors as well, that's something which we can take care of as well. In terms of our target groups, across all the target groups which you possibly have from your target audience, which your clients have or you yourself have. So whether it's medium, large enterprises, or you're looking at small businesses, or we're looking at, say, the consumer side as well. So we work across all these target sectors and different audiences as well. Moving on, In terms of our approach, like I was mentioning, we use a lot of strategy and design thinking in terms of our approach. Effectively, we bring in AI technologies as and when needed. It's not always that we need AI technologies in our research, but that if the brief so demands or the need so demands, we bring in the AI technology as well, but marry it with the human brain. And that's where we create those cohesive pathways to do our research and bring out these tailored insights. And moving on then. So in effect, we work across the entire marketing cycle. Obviously, the people we are speaking to right now, you sit more on the brand and comms side. So we've done a lot of comms testing. We've done a lot of PR kind of evaluations as well in terms of campaigns or informed pitches when it's going into the PR kind of work which is taking place as well. So if any of your research needs are across the marketing cycle, that's something which we can look at any time. In terms of our approach, quantitatively, we have different methodologies which we can access. So we have our own CATI center, which we own ourselves. We work through CAVI technologies, or we work through CAPI technologies as well. So depending on the need of the hour, we will deploy the technology which is needed effectively. And again, going across different markets. And we also have a full-fledged qualitative team in terms of doing any kind of work which needs qualitative inputs, whether qualitative informs quantitative or the quantitative, you need to delve deeper into quantitative and then use qualitative. So we can use both these kind of techniques. We do use AI technologies in our qualitative. Depending again on the need of the hour, we decide whether we need to bring that AI kind of technology as well, whether it's through focus groups, whether it's through in-depth interviews, or we need to get into online communities or conduct something called mobile diaries, etc. And obviously, a lot of ethnographic studies which can be done for ourselves as well. And in terms of data analytics and visualization, we have our own team within us, analytics teams within the business. So we can get into various statistical techniques and analysis, depending again what the objectives are, what the need of the brief is, and we decide which is the best analytical technique to start look into it. And from a data storytelling perspective, it's not just about providing the data and providing data tables to you. We do provide very insightful reports and outcome-led kind of reports, a lot of storytelling involved in it. And if at all we need to integrate any kind of machine learning, we bring that in as well. And like I said, we bring in some of the AI technologies into this entire kind of approach of ours. And the key places where we use AI is one is obviously in kind of any evaluation of concepts or evaluation of those kind of pieces, a lot in creative evaluation as well. So if there's any kind of campaign evaluation to be done or any kind of stimulus evaluation to done, we use AI technologies married along with some human interface as well. And in terms of our partnership as well, we are part of a group called the NT Next, which is a digital native communications agency. So we are bringing in UX design into our research world as well. So it's not just about providing the research, but if any of the research leads to some element of UX design, that's where our partner agency called NT Next works with us to provide those end-to-end solutions. And lastly, just something which could be relevant to the B2B group. We have practitioners within the MPS team who deal with what we call Lego serious play. So this is effectively using Lego-based techniques or Lego language to help kind of senior teams or C-suite teams or even internal teams to kind of work together and think differently and start communicating differently or effectively. And this is it's used a lot in terms of creating some new concepts, creating new ideas or new scenarios when it comes to some strategy planning or some kind of key business objectives, which typically come out of work which is being done. And so that's basically MPS. My contact details are in there. So if anybody who needs any kind of insights and or any kind of research needs, please do reach out to us. And thanks a lot for listening to all of us.
Amazing. Thank you, Avi. And yeah, a really big shout out to MPS and their support of the PRCA, but also all of the integrated services that they can offer. Definitely worth giving Avi a shout after the session today. We are almost at wrap up. I will just pass to Kiri to give you a bit of a heads up on a forthcoming PRCA session that might be of interest to you guys. If you have got any lingering questions, please do feel free to drop them in the Q&A on the chat there. We may be able to linger for a couple more minutes afterwards if you have a burning question for the panelists. But for now, I will pass just to Kiri to tell you about the next event.
Hey everyone, thank you for your time today. Just wanted to kind of quick 30 seconds on our update on our crisis simulation event, which is happening next week on the 6th. It's happening at Hotwire's office. We still have a few tickets left, so feel free to sign up. I will send everyone over the link to that as well. But yeah, I just wanted to say again, everyone, thank you for your time. And yeah, thank you to our sponsors at MPS, and thank you to all our speakers. Really, really insightful presentations there. And yeah, over to you, Liz.
Brilliant. Yep, that then just leaves it for me to wrap up. Thank you again to all four of the brilliant presentations, such different and inspiring campaigns. Hopefully it's given our attendees plenty of food for thought and lots of inspiration for the team at Babel, Golin, the Academy, TMW, and of course Group IB. Thank you for sharing those campaigns with us. You can see why they got shortlisted. And for everybody else, please do check out the PRCA website. The B2B group will be uploading a write-up of the event. Feel free to share your thoughts on today's event on LinkedIn and tag us and indeed the PRCA. A recording will be shared and there will be updates coming through both on the newsletter and on the website for some of our future B2B group events in the next couple of months. So watch this space. But for now, thank you for your attendance and your attention and the great questions. And we will hopefully see you again very soon.